The Esquinas stuff for me was fascinating because I've always been fascinated by his book. And I tracked him down, I want to say January of last year. And then it took me 14 months to convince him to go on the record. And so that was fun. And to then hear his story and hear the details and, what an interesting person. Did you listen to the slow burn on Nixon? The
No.
Slate? Okay. So that podcast series, it's on Watergate. And the first episode is called Martha. And it's named after Martha Mitchell, the wife of the Attorney General. And the reason that the creator, Leon Neyfa, I think is his name, I might be mispronouncing it, but he described it was really cool. He said, the reason I'm opening with Martha Mitchell, and he's like my age or a little younger, is he said, Martha Mitchell's not in any of the movies. She's not in All the President's Men. She's not part of like Woodward and Bernstein's iconography. She wasn't indicted in anything. She wasn't in the cabinet. She's not. But if you were living at the time, Martha Mitchell was a singular, ever-present figure in your experience day to day with Watergate. She was there every day. She was in the news. You knew exactly who she was. She took a ton of interviews. And nobody knows her now. People barely know her husband, John Mitchell, the Attorney General. They know Nixon. They know maybe John Dean. They know Deep Throat, but they might not even know who Deep Throat was. They know Woodward and Bernstein, but they don't know Martha Mitchell. But if you were there, you would know. And that's who Richard Esquinas is. The conversation today around Jordan's gambling is kind of all matted into one thing. I'm actually playing with some Play-Doh right now because my daughter handed it to me before I came down. And, you start with some Play-Doh here, and you start with this piece that she rolled into something, and then you start with these pieces, but eventually you hold Play-Doh and you just smash it down and roll it into a little ball, and you just say, here, I've got Play-Doh. It's got no definition whatsoever. And Richard Esquinas was part of that definition. He was the defining name. If you don't have Richard Esquinas, and the last thing that Jordan had in gambling was Atlantic City, I would be willing to bet that you're not getting all of these terrible columns trying to tie Jordan's gambling with his father's death. I would be willing to bet, listen to me, willing to bet. I'd be willing to bet that you're not hearing as much about his gambling when he retires. And the conspiracy theories are lower. And everything was heightened because all of a sudden we had this number, $1.252 million, that was 10 times the biggest other number that we'd had associated with Jordan's gambling losses. And Richard Esquinas was in the news every day from like June to October. He's on talking to Connie Chung. He's talking to Bob Costas. Everybody's got an opinion on this cat. New York media loves him. Chicago media hates him. NBA is really shaking. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And he was this like central piece, and his book was this central piece of history. And kind of got lost. And people don't even know the story. I saw a buddy of mine tweet that he was talking to a younger friend who just learned from the documentary that Jordan retired. He just thought they didn't win 2 championships. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So that's really what I love about history is sort of like, pulling the Play-Doh back apart and seeing the texture and seeing what really something felt like at the time. And that's what this interview with Esquinas was, which everybody should check out at reject.substack.com. It's for my paid subscribers who include 8 or 9 NBA writers who you know and love.